Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Student's Opinion. It's been a couple of weeks since our first episode. We have been busy and unable to upload regularly, but we aim to get an episode out every Sunday from now. Also, we are looking for guests for future episodes. If you're a student and want to talk to us about schooling in your country, then please email us at contact.thestudentsopinion@gmail.com. The ID will be in the description.
Alright, welcome to the second episode of The Student's Opinion. Today, we have something special for our Indian listeners. We are dipping our toes into the eternal Cbse versus Icse debate. Hi, I'm Medhaansh, I'm your host. I've studied in the Icse for my entire life, studying in the Cbse for 1 year, and currently studying in the UWC Maastricht in the Netherlands of the IB diploma.
I'm Vineet Vinod, your host. Now, I've been in the Cbse curriculum for my entire life as well, until 11th grade when I moved to the United States. And Cbse stands for Central Board of Secondary Education, and it's the mainstream curriculum in Indian education system. Now, Medhaansh, could you tell us more about the Icse system and give us a general overview of what you do?
Well, okay, so let's see. The Icse is basically it's a plethora of emotions across the 10 years. You go through a lot of stuff, but essentially it's much more into a practical learning basis, as in we learn how to apply concepts on our daily life. There's a large number of subjects you can study from. There are a large number of options you can study from. So yeah, well, that's basically Icse till the 10th grade. There's a plethora of emotions. You can learn a variety of subjects, and it's basically practical based learning.
That sounds an awful lot like Cbse. We have 5 core subjects that we study, and we have a load of extracurriculars to choose from in our grades from 1 to 10. But what is it that you believe differentiates Icse from Cbse?
Well, that as an argument, let's go into subject-wise since you brought up subject. Now, as I know, the Cbse offers only 5 core subjects. However, when it comes to the Icse, the range of the subjects that Icse covers is huge. Essentially, it's like vast. It offers like a variety of languages, like English, Hindi, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, and others across the entire nation. It also has even fashion design, agriculture, home science, and cookery for creative minds. Now, if you are, say, a very creative person, if you're an athlete, a visual artist, or even a scientist for that matter, if you want to aim on those career topics, Icse syllabus is the best option you want to aspire to.
Well, that doesn't sound too different from Cbse. Cbse too offers a multitude of languages for students to choose from. It might not be available at every school, but the curriculum does offer exams in those subjects, so students can prepare all of those languages if they wish to. And you were talking about fashion design, agriculture, home science, cookery. Cbse offers those subjects as well. In fact, we have other subjects like robotics, AI, and computer science for students. Now, yes, they're not available at all schools like I previously mentioned, but they still exist.
Here's what I got from your argument about Cbse not being so different from Icse. Well, not to offend anyone who studies a Cbse curriculum, essentially. So this is basically my opinion again, guys. So I'm not trying to offend anyone here. But Cbse, after 1 year in Cbse, I understood that it gives you a very crammed oriented syllabus, which is it's not exactly convenient, because Cbse leaves out a little but crucial subjects and topics that help in the overall development of the student. Coming again to the point of languages, I do agree that not all Icse schools might offer all languages, because you may not find the number of teachers, and so that might agree as well as Cbse. So in that case, we are not that different. However, in one language we are a bit advanced, we are far superior than Cbse is English, because English is far superior in Icse, and that's not a debate, that's a fact. But it's a misconception that it gives us students the edge. The biggest advantage for the ICSE students is the application-based learning, which I previously mentioned. It also does, like for CBSE, you just think within the box, like you have been given an question here, that's the solution. No, in ICSE, it helps you to think outside the box and innovate rather than just being confined to a limited context, you know.
You mentioned a few subjects that CBSE leaves out but ICSE includes. Could you please give a few examples of these?
Let's see. ICSE just doesn't focus, as I said, like we have seen CBSE just focusing on the maths and the science because, the CBSE is the national curriculum of India and it's quite comprehensive for entrance examinations as well. But let's talk about from the point of visual creativity that CBSE essentially doesn't offer. Not in all schools, again, as I'm stating, not in all schools. We have, just like any other school, we have maths, PCMB. We also offer computer applications as a subject, and after 8th grade, during the 9th and 10th, we are given the option of choosing an optional subject which you might be aware of. Now that optional subject varies from physical education, commerce, economics, computer applications. Well, that was essentially what were the 4 topics or choices we had in St. Joseph's Boys High School in Bangalore, India. But I've heard in like some of the schools, like let's say Sacred Hearts, I believe, I'm not sure. So some of the schools also offer cookery, what was that? House science, agriculture, fashion design. Essentially, if ICSE is not only meant to produce, is, as I was just stating, it's not essentially for cramming up, it's for out of the box thinking, which I believe CBSE does not offer. At least from 1 year of studying in humanities in class 11, it does not offer the out of the box thinking at all.
Once again, you keep saying that CBSE focuses on rote learning, but that's not really true. In school, at least, we focus on application-based learning like ICSE, but in exams, I can agree, most of the questions can be answered only through rote learning. But the learning itself is not that way. I am always a believer that exams are used to test your knowledge. Now, since CBSE is a broad national curriculum and has to cater to the needs of everyone across the country, and it's a vast country like India, we cannot really offer application-based questions on a large scale in national level exams because it just becomes that much harder to evaluate students and provide a standardized rank. That's why I believe that the exams specifically are rote learning based. But in general, the learning is absolutely not rote learning based. It is extremely hands-on, as I have seen myself at school. We do a lot of projects, a lot of labs, and honestly, calling it rote learning just based on the exams, I don't think that does justice to CBSE.
True, that does not do justice to CBSE. I will agree with you on that. That's definitely a perspective of what you've seen in the 11th grade. Partly you in science as well as in a lot of experiments. I completely agree that it does not do that. The national curriculum keeps changing. Here's another argument for you. The ICSE, as I said, has a far superior English, but let's be honest here. If I wanted to sit for the JEE, the IIT entrance examination, the NEET entrance examinations, I would most entrance examinations in India are for the science-based fields, which is based on the NCERT base, which is from which CBSE picks most of its topics. But here's the thing: isn't the whole point of changing our education system not to produce just hordes of engineers and doctors just for the sake of it, but let people excel in where their talent lies? I will let you ponder on that question while I go ahead with another point I have as well. Now, if you sit for an international examination like the IELTS, the TOEFL, to just state a few of the English-based examinations, most of them will have an application-based approach, including your interview examinations at top universities. In fact, I believe even the Indian government right now realizes the same. and has made groundbreaking changes to exam patterns like the UPSC, which for a long time where was just to be taught for as an exam that only crammers could crack it. So yeah, I believe that the system is changing, but just not fast enough. So yeah, I believe in that way the ICSE provides you a much more better uh, is much more better suited in that way. But that's my opinion, of course.
Now, you were speaking about how CBSE focuses a lot on science and math and focuses on producing engineers and doctors in hordes. But what you have to realize is that there is that much demand for these courses. Almost everybody wants to go and become an engineer or a doctor. Well, the reasons for that can also be debated about, like parental pressure, peer pressure. But you cannot deny this, there is a demand for these subjects. There's a reason why in my school in Kumarans, where you were in 11th grade, there were 3 sections of science and only one for commerce and humanities, respectively.
Well, yeah, true. I agree. There's a huge demand. We can always debate about the arguments of how parental pressure, mainly how parental pressure, forces students to get into science, just to produce hordes of engineers and medical students. But here's the thing. If I'm not sure if you know for certain, but do you know exactly the aggregate of how many JEE students sit for the exam every year, by any chance?
Yes, about 15 lakh students take the JEE mains exam every year, and of them, about 1.5 to 2 lakh students take the JEE advanced exam. And that is only for the JEE. There are similar numbers for the NEET. So overall, there are like 30 lakh students or 3 million students every year taking science and math exams for higher order education.
True. But as we also stated, India is changing. The government of India has been changing considerably since the last from 2014. I believe that we have seen extremely considerable progress across all the states. In fact, we have seen that there has been a considerable change to the CBSE education system, perhaps. I mean, I think you'll agree on that, seeing that you have studied for 10 years and I have an experience of studying 1 year in the CBSE curriculum in Cumulans.
Yes, there have been changes. Now there is more focus on the social sciences and English subjects beyond the science and math subjects. But then in senior secondary specifically, not many students choose to follow the path of social sciences. So they don't go into commerce and humanities streams. And even today, science is the most popular stream after 10th grade.
True, that's true. In India, I won't disagree with that. I can see that even in ICSE, once you pass, a lot of students are like, I'm going to study science, even though, well, they're not good in science. So they go into the ISC grade, which is after the ICSE, and then they start studying. But here's my argument as well as to why I feel that even after studying 1 year in the CBSE, where I just said, oh my god, CBSE is so good than ICSE, it's way simpler, is that most of the focus is on textbooks that are prescribed for their studies, and I believe that teachings rarely in the humanities stream, at least I don't know how it goes in the science, but it rarely ventures out of them, which I believe restricts the students' knowledge to only that what can be learned through the textbook. Also, you mentioned the rote learning. I know for a fact that CBSE teachers and literally everyone in the CBSE curriculum is known to encourage it. Since the syllabus is detail oriented, more students, no, let's scratch that. Most students, 100% of all students are sometimes forced to resort to mugging up without fully understanding the concepts. Now, without understanding the concepts, how can you apply it on a day-to-day basis? Now, over here, as I said, I'm studying the IB over here, and because my concepts are very clear in mathematics, I feel that it becomes much more easier to me. I'm not justifying the fact that where in life you will use a plus b the whole square, or any other formula from trigonometry in day-to-day life. But if your entire concept is clear, it helps you in your future learning. In CBSE, that prevents it. You don't allow the students to go ahead and progress further.
I don't know where you got that misconception from, but I'm going to speak from my experience for this. At least in the science classes, in my physics and math classes, all of my teachers focused on helping us understand where the formulae came from. They didn't force us to mug up the derivations per se. Yes, we had to do that for the tests, because like I said before, CBSE is a national level test, and you have to have some sort of standard to evaluating all the students. And with a vast number of students, the best way you can do it is by having a prescribed textbook from which you ask questions. But at least in the classes, in schools, teachers make a conscious effort to help the student understand and learn where things come from rather than just purely mugging it up, like you say. Now, in the humanities and commerce sections, I don't know how that works because I haven't taken those subjects. It is possible, from your experience as you speak, it is possible that it's focused more on memorization of the textbook rather than doing research on the different topics and learning and discovering things for yourself. But generalizing it to everybody is not something that I would advise. For the exams, what you said, it's perfectly fine. I agree with that. But then the teaching is absolutely not as you say it is.
True, Vineet, you're just speaking. Okay, I'm gonna bring out the point that you're just speaking from the point from Kumarins, right, where you've studied till class 11.
No, I'm speaking from most of my friends. I have a lot of friends from across Bangalore who go to other schools, and they too are of the same opinion. They don't feel like the CBSE teaching itself limits them to a textbook. They feel the exam limits them to a textbook, but not the teaching.
Okay, yeah. I agree with you, Vineet. I agree with your friends. I agree with your colleagues, and I agree definitely on the fact that you have a large number of friends studying in the CBSE curriculum. Of course, you have studied 10 years over there. But here's the thing: I too have friends in CBSE dominated states, or in places like Kolkata, Agra, Delhi, Noida, Chandigarh, etc. Just to name a few. Delhi is debatable, but let's leave that aside. They also have said that their teachers just promote rote learning because apparently it just getting the grade is much more important to the student, to the parent, to the teachers as well. Now over here as well, I'm not saying that ICSE does not do rote learning. ICSE does, but but here's the thing: if you have seen our examination papers before, you will see that especially in the PCMB, there's a lot of application basis questions in section B, which I feel that CBSE does not. I think you'll be able to give me a better view upon that. But yeah, I feel that there was a large number of practical analysis, which if you don't know the concept clearly, you can't apply it directly. So yeah.
Yes. Now, you did talk about having friends in other states. When I'm presenting my points, I'm focused morely on my friends in Bangalore because I don't know those many people from outside, from other states. So in other states, it might be the case that the teachers focus on rote learning, and that's expected because it's a vast country. There's a lot of diversity. And there are differences in everything we do, the way we live, the way we speak. So there'll also obviously be differences in the way we learn. Now, coming to the point where you say that the test also has application-based questions, if I'm not wrong, about 20% of the CBSE paper, all of them, science, maths, social sciences, include application-based questions. So they present real-world problems and ask you to present a solution to them. Now, yes, it might not be as general as ICSE.
Oh yeah, true. Okay, so I got an understanding of how the CBSE exactly works. So 20% of your entire grade is based on analytical questions. But I think the ICSE, speaking from an ICSE perspective, it's much more higher. Now, also, I'm just going to go quickly back into English because that's the main essential debatable point of topic that I have at the moment. We study, I feel that considering to CBSE, we study a lot of literature based texts. Especially we learn one of the greatest plays written by one of the greatest writers in English literature, William Shakespeare. And I feel that if you ask and I feel that gives us the edge when it comes to literature based questions when for the for English and ICSE. And also we are just talking about CBSE from the point where English is the main mode of communications, like Kumrans or in Bangalore, for in general, Bangalore being the IT center, of course. Going to any other school in outside Bangalore or and into other states in India, the emphasis is given much higher to the Hindi language. Now, this doesn't bode well for students who don't speak the language or face difficulties learning the new languages. I remember that this being a topic of like great discussion, and there was a huge argument with our history teachers in our history teachers class in Kumrans back in CBSE back last year. So yeah, I mean, Hindi being the mode of communication as a language, of course, Hindi is one of the is the first official language of India, as written in it's something that we know. But if you focus on, let's say, a student who because the CB why do students prefer CBSE? Because their parents are constantly, some of the parents are constantly a move, they can get into any other CBSE schools just like that. It's not an issue. Now, if say a student was studied his entire life down south, or let's say from Bangalore itself, and is suddenly thrown into Delhi, where in a CBSE school where the entire mode of communication is Hindi, then how does that bode well? How does that student progress then? On the other hand,
Now, I don't know what you're talking about mode of communication, because the first language in CBSE is English. It's a core language. It's a core subject.
true, but that's not compulsorily held for all schools.
It is. It is. Every CBSE student takes an English exam before they pass their 10th grade and 12th grade. It's a compulsory subject that they have to take. So they do receive a English education, and all other subjects except their second and third languages have to be taught in English. Now, yes, some teachers may not be that well educated in English, and they might mix in a few words from the native language that they know everybody speaks. And your example of a Bangalore person going to Delhi and facing difficulties in class because the mode of communication in Hindi is completely unfounded. And yes, you were talking about literature. Now, this is where I believe you should have the option to choose whether you want to study a subject or not. And that's something I find that America does really well, where you choose the subjects you want to study right from high school. Not everyone wants to study literature. Like, I know some of my friends who are focused on science subjects like physics, chemistry, and math, and they didn't really care much about literature. But then in ICSE, they were forced to study literature, especially the works of William Shakespeare. Yes, they have good lessons in stories, but then the language is completely obsolete. Like, nobody speaks the same English that was spoken during Shakespeare's time. So I believe that those sort of topics should be introduced in 11th and 12th, or in 9th and 10th as optional subjects where you can choose to do it or not. It's the same argument saying, why don't we introduce calculus in 9th grade in a math class in 9th grade? Well, that's because not everybody will pursue mathematics in future, and not everybody requires calculus. And that's why I believe that if you're introducing something, a higher order concept, it should be optional to students. So that way they choose subjects that they think they're most likely going to use in future.
All right, true. I agree with that. True, there are always pros and cons with every essentially like every subject we can talk about, and I agree with how the American system actually works as well. Like last time, I understood that the US system gives you the option, and I have seen over here in the IB as well, that IB diploma program as well, that you're given choice of subjects of what you want to study. You don't have to study something compulsorily, except for English being the mode of communication, of course. But that also depends on what level you are on as well, seeing that we have students from across the world. Okay, yeah, so yeah, we have been focusing a lot on English, I believe. Let's talk about math, right? Could you give our listeners, in fact, a few more details of how the math system works in the CBSE curriculum?
Yes. So math in CBSE is Not at the same level as ICSE until 10th grade, and that's something I will accept. ICSE has, and I know for a fact that it has a more difficult math curriculum than CBSE. One of my friends, when I was in 7th grade and he was in 5th grade, they were learning percentages in ICSE, while in CBSE it wasn't introduced until like 8th grade. So that way, I have to say that the ICSE math program is much more advanced than CBSE. And that also brings about another problem. When you go from 10th grade to 11th grade in CBSE, the 11th grade of CBSE tries to catch up to ICSE. So there's a huge leap in the coursework and the academic load for students. So from basic trigonometry in 10th grade, you just go into sequences, series, calculus. And I find that to be a pretty big leap. Now, what would I like to see done? I would like to see the math program in CBSE be a bit more accelerated. That way, students are not completely overwhelmed when they get to 11th grade. And talking about students getting overwhelmed when they get to 11th grade, is that a problem you faced in ICSE as well?
All right, yeah, true. Agree on that. So, as you know, I studied till class 10 in ICSE curriculum in St. Joseph's. And then I came to Kumrans for class 11 studying the humanities. So I can't say exactly what the experience would be for 11 and 12, which becomes the ISC, which stands for the Indian School Certificate. But I have friends who have done the ISC curriculum. It is challenging. It definitely is challenging. It is certainly a leap because essentially 11 and 12 is a leap. But I wouldn't say it as a leap for in terms of maths, because I've seen that a large number of topics that we discussed all across ICSE, the syllabus overall was the same in ISC, in fact. And I believe that if CBSE students decide to leave after class 10 and join ISC, I think they have a much harder time to cope up with the entire amount of math syllabus than the ICSE students do, because the ICSE know what they're getting into rather than what most CBSE students wouldn't know, of course, studying, of course, all the 10 years in CBSE.
That's interesting. And how was your experience moving from ICSE to CBSE in 11th grade?
Honestly, I would say that since I studied humanities, it was, not exactly what I was hoping for. But I got an education out of it. I made a couple of friends out of it. But I noticed that the CBSE have a kind of, especially some of the CBSE students, they have a kind of dislike mainly for the ICC students, and they just shun them on the side. At least that's what I noticed in the seeing in the humanities stream and even the commerce stream for that part. They just shun the ICC kids on the side. They're like, oh, they're too smart. Let's just shun them on the side. Let's just keep them apart. So I understood the fact that it's not exactly that great on the CBSE, because before class 10, like under class 10, I think you would agree as well, CBSE also provides a lot of pressure, but ICSE provided a lot of pressure on me, and everyone's like, oh my god, we're in CBSE, 50% of the syllabus is cut, oh my god, it's so great. But here's the thing, even though your 50% of the syllabus was cut, you guys, I think your overall average fell down compared to the rest of the thing, whereas ICSE had a considerably higher than normal average, even though both of our examinations were cancelled for class 10. But keeping that on the side, I felt that the CBSE curriculum, of course, this is strictly from the humanities perspective. I cannot speak from science because that's not what I've studied. Humanities perspective, I got introduced to a lot of new terms which I knew what they stood for, but we had never done that back in SGBHS, like viva, or orals and orals. Okay, that was something quite pretty new to me, and I was like, okay, that's something that CBSE does. That's cool enough. But when I saw how your papers work, I couldn't refer to any previous papers. I couldn't go back to any old papers. I couldn't study them just to understand how the paper works. Which I could do in the Icse, by the way. Any paper I could go back to from the last 10 years overall, last 5 years to make it much more precise. And I just noticed that I could understand that these are the questions that are generally asked. This is from the topic, this is from the subject. From Cbse, it was like it's basically a Cbse examinations are a bit of lottery. You go in, you get one question. This is from this chapter. This is from that chapter. There's no perfect analysis you can make from the Cbse paper, which brings us to the point of rote learning that happens especially in the Cbse, which is practically hard in the humanities stream because let's take a subject like economics. You have to study 5 chapters of micro and 5 chapters of statistics. Both are incredibly hard to memorize, literally each and every method and terminology of how to go ahead, which I feel the Icse does not promote even in the ISC in the 11th and 12th. So yeah, that's my point of view from the humanities stream perspective.
That's a lot of interesting information you presented. And yes, I do agree that Cbse papers are hard to analyze, but I think that's a good thing because it keeps you guessing, right? And you can't just memorize. Let's say that in a test paper, you get 3 questions from chapter 1, 4 from chapter 3, and so on. Then students would spend proportional times preparing each chapter. Now, what I don't like about that is that students don't try to learn everything that's there in the curriculum. Rather, they just focus on what they need to pass the test. But the way Cbse does it, by making the questions random, you have to know the entire breadth of the curriculum. And that makes it more that you learn from your schooling rather than just memorizing before the exam whatever you need to know from each chapter. And yes, I agree, you have your opinions about it. And it's fine to be divided. And we have been divided on most issues so far. But we got to move on now. And I think this is the perfect time to get to the general myths section. So what are some myths about Icse that you know?
Oh, okay. So general myths. Yeah, so here's one of the greatest myths that I've heard. All ICC students speak in a kind of William Shakespeare's language from that time. I mean, we do speak normal language, English language as well, but it's just very, very silly to consider that we speak in a William Shakespeare topic time. I mean, we do speak because we have to understand the answers as well, but we just don't speak that in our day-to-day lives. What about Cbse? Could you give one of the myths that corresponds similar to it, maybe?
Now, that was an interesting myth, and I have one with Cbse as well, and that is all students believe that if you don't pursue the science stream in 11th grade, then you're quote-unquote stupid, right?
Yeah, true.
And I can see where that myth comes from. It's a lot of peer pressure in the Cbse, and it's as I've said before, Cbse covers the entirety of India, which is an extremely vast country, and there's a lot of demand for engineers and doctors. So I can see where the myth comes from, but then it's completely unwarranted and it does not have any foundations and evidence to it. In fact, I know several people who have taken commerce and humanities and are just as smart, if not smarter, than people who have taken science. And I'm not saying that people who take science are dumb or smart. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the stream you choose does not determine how smart you are, like most people believe.
Yeah, true. Streams don't determine that, and I agree with you on that basis.
And that's a myth that exists in Icse too, if I'm not wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. It exists as well. Because I have a couple of friends whom, when I told that I'll be taking the humanities stream, they directly went and asked me, dude, you didn't get a good percentage in your Icse? And I was like, no, I got a rather great percentage, in fact. But I choose humanities because I'm good at it. I don't want to take science because I know I won't do well in it. So yeah, I understand from where it comes from as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing, you brought up percentages. So people are usually of the opinion that people who score above 90% in the board exams, which is the final exam you take in your 10th and 12th grade to pass the Cbse curriculum, they believe that only if you get above 90% in your 10th grade board exams can you take science, and if you get below that, you're just relegated to the commerce and humanities streams, which is absolutely not true.
True. Yeah, I agree on that basis. So yeah, I think one more myth essentially is that the syllabus won't help ICC student prepare for competitive examinations. I think we spoke about that in detail, but essentially that's also a myth because well, let's see, numerous students who have studied in the ICSE schools have succeeded in state and national level examinations, and our syllabus is designed in such a way that students can develop the skills which will help them pass competitive exams at the first attempt. The ICC board pays high importance to English language, and it becomes easier for students appearing for examinations like I'm going to be stating examinations like TOEFL again, just and they outshine others by performing better. And as far as the English language is concerned, I'll always bring this again and again. ICSE board students have always the edge over other students. The schools never give more importance to a single subject, and that's more important to note that unlike CBSE's focusing on only mathematics and science, basically, ICSE schools don't give importance to a single subject, and they believe that it can make the students lose interest in other subjects as well.
Now, CBSE 2 does not completely focus on science and math. It might appear so on the outside because of the demand for science and math, but objectively speaking, CBSE 2 does not endorse only science and math. It too tries to provide as broad an education as possible.
That's amazing to hear, and well, that's something new I learned today.
Yeah, that's a myth you had that I just busted.
Yes, that's true. So yeah, so even as hosts, we often don't understand. We also have our own myths that we hold inside, like, oh, this is how it works, and so on and so on. And I feel today, I think our listeners learned a lot from the basis of ICSE and CBSE. Well, given the fact that we are in a timed podcast, we can't go on now. So yeah. I feel we went extensively into what ICSE and CBSE goes, how it works.
Yes, that's true. Now, we're not saying either curriculum is better than the other. Each has its own pros and cons, and that's left to our listeners to decide whether you would prefer to be in the CBSE or ICSE system. And altogether, it makes for a very good discussion with your friends, peers, family about what do I like. At the end of the day, you should choose the curriculum that benefits your strengths and complements it the best. And CBSE does that in the sense it does not have a very hard curriculum until the 10th grade, so you can explore other interests along with your academics, and you can see for yourself where you're actually excelling and which subjects you might want to pursue later on. While ICSE, I feel more like is providing an in-depth knowledge, which is not bad in any sense. I just feel that the academics of ICSE is way more rigorous, and you have to, it's a bit more difficult to manage your time in ICSE than CBSE. Now, yes, Medhaansh, you can disagree with me on that, but that's just my opinion at the end of the day.
Well, yes, so that brings us to the end of the second episode of the Student's Opinion. I hope you guys had an amazing time listening to us go on about the ICSE and CBSE, and I hope you bring this up with your friends as well.
Now, you can listen to us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and on YouTube. Be sure to leave your comments and what you think about this debate on YouTube, and also please leave us feedback. We love feedback. And see you in the next episode next week.